The September 16th committee of the whole meeting to order at 6:30. I'd like to remind everybody to make sure we have your microphones on because there's people attending online. And let's start with roll call, please.
John Glenn.
Here.
Paul Dwyer.
Here.
Travis Schulze.
Here.
Richard Garrington.
Present.
Sean Zabinski. Nicole Hart. Patrick Devine.
Here.
Nellie Peter. Here. Dean Peterson.
Here.
We have a quorum, right?
Yes.
So let's move on to the first item is the financial audit presentation by Clifton Larson Allen.
Good evening, can you still hear me okay?
Yep.
Oh,
Yes.
Perfect. And I don't know, am I still sharing or did that come off?
You're still sharing.
Still sharing, okay, so perfect. All right, well, good evening. My name is Brock Guyan. I'm a partner in charge of your annual external audit, and I'm gonna go over things pretty quick. I saw you guys got a pretty good agenda there. So I won't keep you all night on this, but I am at your disposal if you have any questions as I go through things or you had lined some up as beforehand. Feel free to chime in anytime. Otherwise, I will follow a handout that I forwarded on earlier today. So hopefully you got a copy of that, but you can follow on the screen here as well. Just some highlights, a little different format, and I find it's a little bit more usable than the financial statement itself. So with that, I'll get into it. Want to give some credit to your team there and the audit crew as well. Did a pretty good job of pulling the information together pretty quickly this year. We did have numbers and drafts ready by the end of May, largely a scheduling. I mean, we did have some review and quality review issues after that, but more of a scheduling issue is why I'm here in September versus earlier in the year talking with you. So they did a nice job there. On the handout here, I'm going to start out in section 1. And the top part of page 1 covers the reports we issued along with the audit. The first one is the financial statements. The booklet itself, we've issued an unmodified opinion. It's the highest level you can achieve, so that's great news. There is a new standard this year, and it was a pretty significant one, generally speaking, for the industry. It's subscription-based IT agreements. So if you have those and they're long-term, you have to analyze those to see if they get included in your financial statements to disclose like a liability and some pretty robust disclosures. The good news is you do not have any of those, so you won't see a change in numbers or the disclosures. But again, we had some work there, and your team had to pull together some agreements to look through this year to make those conclusions. The other part that we issue is a management letter, and you have 3 things in there. They're very common. You've received them in the past, prior years, so nothing new there. More annual reminders. One, as auditors, we do propose some adjustments to your books. We do draft the document itself, financial statements, and the last one, more key to this committee and the council. Continue doing your good work here with reviews and approvals and asking questions, because it is considered a mitigating factor. So you mitigate that risk of lack of segregation of duties because you have you as oversight doing a role in your internal control system. It doesn't eliminate the risk here because you're not going to hire a bunch of people to solve the problem, but we do rely on your controls that you have in place over things like disbursements, receipts, and journal entries. All right, I'm going to shift gears and start getting into some of the numbers here. So hopefully you can see this. Get it about as big as I can here. So first thing I'm going to talk about is your general fund. And a couple things you've noticed, not going through all the numbers here, but you can kind of see here in the 3rd row, there's a leases receivable row. Didn't have balances in 21 and 20. Just a reminder there, that was a new standard in 22, a year prior, where you brought these lease receivables in this case, and in other cases, liabilities on the books, and note disclosures, which you had in the past. I'm going to look at the second to last row here, the change in fund balance, to say, well, how did the year go for the general fund? You're going to see a negative 84,000. So that is negative. However, a couple rows up, you see that your annual expenditures for the year is just under 8 million. So just short of 1% off as far as breaking even on that budget. Not bad at all. and not an indication of concern either. Obviously, you like to see positive results, but when you're a negative number like that's not bad. So I'm going to point you to the 3 shaded rows for the second analysis I typically look at for all my clients, and that's your 1.9 million or almost 2 million of unassigned fund balance. That's your true reserves. We're going to compare that to the second shaded row, which is how much you spent, your expenditures for the year, and you get that ratio at the bottom. So that 24.5% is right in the ballpark of what you have for a policy. General rule of thumb we always preach is you want a minimum of somewhere around 25 to 33%, which is only equates to about 3 or 4 months worth of reserve. So it's not a lot. Wouldn't look at it in excess by any stretch, but in good shape, because we do see a lot of clients with less than that, and they have less options. That's what it comes down to. Okay. I'm gonna move on to page 2, and here's all the rest of your governmental funds. Again, won't touch upon all these. Maybe point out a couple of the different trend changes here. If you're looking at just reserves at the end of the year, looking from year to year, going across the grid, you're going to see the library took a pretty nice increase this year. Probably remember, a big chunk of that was about $1.1 million in various donations, a couple of very large ones in there. If you take that out of it, then your operationally came in pretty close to break even. So the revenue sources were offsetting the expenses for the year. The other one is your ambulance district, your 4th row down. You can see there we went from 2.8 million to 3.4, so a nice year there. Operationally as well, came out of that game about $588,000. We'll move to the bottom of the page and just cover a couple of the capital project funds. First one, you're going to see a pretty significant drop. Not a red flag either. That's planned. That's the way these things work, right? You funded either typically, ideally in advance. You did have some debt issuances in 22 and in 23. And then 23 is when a lot of those project costs were incurred. So a couple of the bigger items, again, probably remember these, but 5.9 million of expense for EMS building and 1.9 for various park improvements and equipment. You do have 4 tax incremental districts. Those are listed out there. The good news here is all 4 of them are generating incremental revenue, tax increment, as they're designed to do, and they all had positive results. So by nature, these things spend money up front and recover it over time. You actually have 2 of the 4 that are already in a positive situation, positive reserves, so they've received more increment tax revenue than they have spent. And you have plenty of time in all 4 of these rather, as you can see at the bottom there, as far as projects yet to be incurred and timeline to incur those and recover those costs. Page 3, here's where your utilities are listed. I'm going to focus in on really just 2 things here. The top section is your water utility. The last row in every section just gives you an indication when you had the last rate increase applicable to the 23 audit. I'm actually not sure if you've done any in 24 here year to date, but at least through December in our audit procedures, I believe the last rate increase for water was January 1st of 23, so right at the beginning of that year. So you're going to see a whole year's worth of benefit at those new rates in water for the year. And so I look at that net income or loss row, and you'd have positive results and net income of $630,000 in water utility this year. Same analysis in sewer. This one, it's been quite a while since you've had a rate increase there, back in 2016. Operationally and cash flow wise, though, this fund is doing just fine. It is generating income for the year, and it's growing its reserves and cash balance. Something to keep in mind here too, though, you do have a pretty significant depreciation charge. So anything you have to purchase infrastructure wise, as I'm sure you know, is usually a really big ticket item. So reserves typically don't go very far, and a lot of your equity is tied up already in existing capital. So 22 million of it at the end of 23 is capital related, net of the debt you've issued to pay for it. So a couple things to keep in mind there. The last fund is your mass transit on the last page here. You're going to look at that net income or loss row, because this is, again, another full accrual statement fund. And you do have positive results of about $217,000. One thing to note, in 2023, you did have 390,000 more of state aid and grants than you did the year before. So it's primarily the difference between 22 and 23. So you had more funding there. So you got to continue to keep your eyes on operationally the cost versus the fee revenue and that kind of other revenue sources in that fund. And the last thing I'll cover then is just a summary of your long-term debt obligations. Mentioned earlier, you did issue some debt in 23. You issued $3.6 million of new debt in 23, and you repaid $3.4 million in principal. So about the same amount of new debt came on the books as you paid off for the year, and that's all part of your financing plan. And I believe you might be probably talking about that a little bit here in the next agenda item as well. So I won't get into too much more than that. Maybe just a couple other things to point out which might look unusual. Here's a lease liability row in the bottom section. Mentioned earlier in 22, fiscal year 22, you had a new standard. Here's the liability side of that impact. The other thing which might look wrong, but it's not a typo, the last row there is WRS net pension liability or asset. So this is your participation in the state administered plan. And maybe 8 years ago or so, a new standard came out. You got to start bringing all that stuff on your books. The plan's information for your participation percentage of that plan on your books. So over the years, it has swung back and forth, whether it's been overfunded plan or underfunded. So what this tells you is between 22 and 23, it did change. It went from an overfunded plan for 3 years straight to underfunded. So your portion of the overall underfunding of it is $2.3 million. The last time it was a liability was back in 2019. So like I said, it has over time gone back and forth. The good news here is WRS is a pretty well-funded plan compared to a lot of other states. So the fact that you're kind of right on the border there, brink going either way, is just fine. And there is no, you don't have to come up with $2.3 million to pay for this liability either. You continue to pay the benefits through your payroll like you always have. And you shouldn't have to worry about, at least in the short term here, that we can see having to fund it any further. What they do is they just control the contribution rates to kind of maintain that close to break even. Very last point I'll make is the percentage at the bottom. And what that is a measurement of your statutory limit for how much tax supported debt you can hold. And you're at 63.8% of that at the end of 23 at that measuring point. Means you do have some capacity should you need to issue some new debt that's a GO debt or tax supported. The other thing to keep in mind here is you do have two categories of debt up in the top section of this debt section: water GO bonds and sewer GO bonds. Technically, these are tax supported or backed, but you're paying these off using user rate revenue. So you're not levying to repay this debt, even though it's technically classified that way. You're using revenue sources from those two funds to pay for it. So that's part of the big picture here. Hopefully that makes some sense. With that, I'll just wrap it up and turn it over to see if you have any questions I can answer for you.
Anybody have any questions? So I guess, thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. If you think of anything, just funnel them through finance. I can get back to you at a later date as well.
Thank you. Looks like the next item, number 2 on the agenda, is Eller's Financial Management Plan presentation.
Wasn't sure if she was going to introduce me or something.
Oh, sorry.
You got up, so I wasn't sure what you were up to. Grab this. So you got to endure my long presentation in May, and we just got done with it, so I'm not going to do that again. But what I will do is hit kind of the highlights of what's changed since then and some of the things that we've updated since then. So, are you running the? Okay. Supposedly what Molly printed out, the graphics didn't do so well, but they'll be better on the screen, I guess.
Do you want to control it or do you want me to? It's up there.
I can do it if you want me to. What do I hit? Which one is it?
Might have.
Oh.
Sorry. Scroll down, I guess, because it's not a PowerPoint, it's a PDF. So you just scroll down this way.
Where am I scrolling? Do you want to run it? Why don't you run it? That might be easier. It'll take us longer to do that than me to present. Let's just go right to the first page. So I'm just going to go through, we're going to review some of the bond rating and financial policies, the operating, which hasn't really changed because levy limits are still here to stay at least. We'll go through the capital plan, and then we'll do a review of your TIF districts. Next page. Oh, you're still fighting it? Okay, go down to the next one. In the back of the packet that you had, I did put the rating report, but just to kind of highlight, we did get reaffirmed, as you know, from the borrowing this year as a AA or an A+, or an A1, sorry. What they did say, though, is we do have a couple of benchmarks that are a little bit better about saying what does it take to get to the next rating. One thing would be the fund balance needs to come up basically to about 50%, and that's a number they're using that is actually not just the general fund, it's the entire entity. And so I actually don't have that. Well, maybe I do. So one of the things that that rating report does is it gives you some of those metrics, and right now they say that you're at 41.2%. So the utilities do help us out. In the general fund, we're more at 24%, as you saw from the auditors. So with the utilities, we actually end up getting a little bit closer to that benchmark of the 50% that Moody's is looking for to take us up a notch. The other thing that you have out there that has a pretty good chance of getting paid off in the next 2 years is the advance from the sewer utility to the TIF number 8. And we'll go through TIF 8 in a little bit to show you how the fact that if you stick to the plan that we can maybe get you off of that item as well. So that's 2 things out of 3 that kind of can take you to that next step as far as a rating. The next one's a little bit tougher. It has something to do with long-term liabilities. The ratio that they have that they want you to get down to is 200%, which is, I think it's all of your liabilities. And I'm not sure what they're using to come up with that, but right now we're at 292%. So they're looking for you to come down, and the only way we're going to be able to do that is to kind of reduce how much we're borrowing. Maybe the projects you have are things that you can, if you want to bring that down, is something that we'd have to bring it down. So I kind of have to look at your projects that are in the capital plan and decide whether or not that's something that you want to strive to do, is to reduce the liabilities in the long-term area so that you're able to get to that benchmark. So that's something that we can work towards. It's kind of one of those things that, depends on what your projects are, and if there's something that they need to be done and you're behind what are on that 5-year plan, then it's one of those things that we're just updating facilities, and that might be something that comes later on. Next page. So then we'll just go through the financial policies, and these are the 3 that I'll touch on today. So next page. Unassigned fund balance is your general fund unassigned, which is what Brock just talked about, divided by the expenditure, and he got you at 24.5%, which is a little bit below that policy. When you're in excess of the policy, you have the ability to use fund balance for one-time things, which I have a slide for what kind of things you would use that for. If you don't have enough fund balance, then you're supposed to come up with a plan that gets you back to 25%. So it's something where, if you're transferring money out to capital or whatever the transfers were in the financials, if you're doing that, that's something maybe you want to hold back on to make sure you've got that policy in place. But you should try to figure out how you're going to get back to that 25%. The next page is just kind of definitions of fund balance. I won't go through those. If you want me to define those farther or more detail, I can do that, but that unassigned on the bottom is basically that working capital that the auditors talked about. Next page is really what you can use fund balance, or what you should only use fund balance for. And really, instead of going through each item, my summary of this is don't use it for operations. If you get stuck using fund balance for operations, that's one-time money. If you start paying somebody's salary with one-time money, guess what? It goes away. And so you won't have a fund balance. If you've got that excess fund balance, because you're not going to fire the person when you run out of that cash, but if you've got excess fund balance, use it towards one-time things, whether it's capital, maybe it's a reassessment, things that are one-time in nature. The next page is the fund balance percentage. And that's got the right numbers on it. Is that the old presentation?
No, this is the old one was 30.
Okay, yeah, that's right, I wrote down the numbers. So what I'm showing is that we kind of trended around 28%, and then we were about 24.5%, as Brock said. So that, you can see that you're kind of floating along your policy line, but not quite making it at this point. The next page is just your investment policies. I won't go through that with you individually. We kind of did at the last presentation, but you're working with an investment advisor. With rates the way they are, they're starting to go down. The thing you want to start thinking about is having your items in fixed asset or fixed type of investments so that you're keeping your interest income up and you're able to rely on it. The problem with doing things like the banks or maybe the state pool is that those are variable rates. And so when they're going up, it's great, but when they start coming down, you can't stop your interest income from going down. So in this kind of environment, you want to be in things that kind of stabilizes that interest rate at something. And it's also probably a good time to get your ladder for investments set up, which basically gives you things coming due every once in a while and stabilizes that interest income. So hopefully you've been using Tammy to do some recommendations on investments. Going into operating section, so we'll go down another one. So the famous levy limits, we can't get away from them. They gave us a little bit of money, as we talked about a year ago from shared revenues. It was a one-time Band-Aid. You're gonna see on the operating projection that it's gonna start to hit you right away in 25. So it's something that we talked about having some kind of a plan or starting to figure out how we're gonna actually be able to fund our services, or are we at a place that maybe we have to send out a survey and find out from our residents if we can't get more revenue, if you aren't willing to vote for a referendum, what kind of services are you willing to give up? And if they say none, then they should be supporting you with a levy limit referendum. You have a couple things you can do in the interim, is that you can look for things that maybe there's excess money coming through your budget and you're able to maybe move things around. You could look for items that, like I said, that maybe you don't need to have a service that does like mowing every time or plowing as much as you do. Maybe there's things that you can cut back on that allow you to maybe spread some of that extra budget to the other budgets. Then you have the option of looking at alternative revenues, which are really just taxes, whether it's the wheel tax or maybe it's stormwater utility or something to that fact, where you're finding another revenue source that's legal to use and not something that somebody looks at it and says, you can't do that, that's a tax, it's a property tax, you can't do that. So you've got a couple of alternative revenues you can look at. There aren't a lot, but that's one thing that can maybe pop up your revenues a little bit, that maybe you don't have to cut your services right away. And then, of course, the worst case scenario that we talked about when I was here in May was the fact that the levy limit really is the nuclear bomb as far as doing something, and really you need to be ready with what your message is going to be. There's places out there that can help you do marketing for that. That survey can be a good starting point with what you can do or what people are willing to do as far as your services. So it's something that can at least give you something to hang your hat on as you go towards a levy limit referendum. So the next page is the levy limit capacity spreadsheet, and it's a lot of numbers, but I'll point to specific things, and I'll just point to them up here. So the one line that's important is this one that says assume net new construction percentage. So last year we were almost at 2%. This year we're under 0.5%. We projected it at 0.5% at this point because that's kind of in the ballpark of where you've been. It's aggressive compared to this year, but it's right in the ballpark. But what that translates into is about $20,000 of taxes. Now, I think if your budget just goes up by inflation, that's not enough to cover your budget. So what happens is that you don't have enough revenue to cover your expenditures, and you'll see on the operating forecast that's in a couple pages that it ends up putting you in deficit. Now, the line that I used for doing the general fund is this levy limit before adjustments. This is the line that I call, this brown line, this is the line I call your operating line, and that needs to levy money to cover not only the general fund, but the other funds like the library, the fire, some of those other funds that get tax levy. So the way I approach the operating projection is I gave the general fund the whole $20,000 because it doesn't really matter if I split that up between the funds. They're all going to go deficit because they're not going to be able to keep up with inflation. But I put that all in the general fund. That's really the only increase we're showing in the general fund revenues. The formula basically says that's the total amount in taxes I can do for operating. Anything on the other funds I'm taking away, and then the general fund is what got the total of it. The next page is really just a summary of what net new construction has done. As you can tell, you've had some good years where you've been in the 3%, and that's translated to something around 100,000 plus. But as you can tell, that those last couple, the last couple of years have been more in the under 100,000, and this year being about $20,000. Next page just talks about what's subject to levy limits. So your operating funds that have tax levies, or general fund, the library, et cetera, those are all subject to the levy limit and are covered by that brown line that I talked about. What's outside of the general or the levy limit is your general obligation debt. And so when you borrow for projects, or let's say that you did a 1 year borrowing for a piece of equipment or something like that, as long as it's a long-term debt of at least a year and a day, you can put that on the adjustment line and tax for it. So that's money that you are not limited by. The one thing that's going to limit your debt is your debt capacity that the auditor just talked about a little bit ago. Once you hit your capacity on the debt, obviously you can't issue anymore, and you'd have a stopping point at that. The next page is how we just set up what we were using for growth, for value. Your TID-in is averaged about 8%. That's all the value in the city, not just the outside of the TID, it's everything. And then there's a TID-out version, which we take the TID portion out of the values, and you've averaged about 6%. So with the growth assumptions, we said that TID-in was going to be about 5% growth. TID-out, we're saying nothing's going to occur outside of a TIF district. If you do, that's great, because that you can spread your general tax levy to those taxpayers. We showed that net new construction is 0.5%. That's conservative, hopefully, but obviously this year showed that that's about right in the area. And so this is kind of what we use to do tax rates going forward, or computing your debt limit. Next page. So as I said, we got about $398,000 of shared revenue for the '24 budget. The increase for shared revenues for this year is not going to be like that. It's going to be probably more like $10,000, $20,000. It's not going to be quite that much. We held all the other revenue sources flat. Last year you also got, or 2024, you also got a nice bump in transportation aids. We're not expecting a large increase in that one as well. So you had a couple things that helped you stay away from levy limit issues last year. And then interest earnings have been increasing because of rates. It's just a matter of trying to stabilize that to make sure you've got investments in more fixed income type products. The next page is how we forecasted the general fund, actually all the fund, the library and actually all the tax levy funds, is that we had 3% inflation. We used 11%, which is a number I've been hearing that the states increase in the health insurance. Some places, I think last year we used 8%, so you'll see that there's the average of what we had for increases on the projection are a little higher this year because of that health insurance. So the next page is how that all shakes out. As I said, the levy line is really the one that is gaining all the levy limit dollars, so you can see those are going up by about $20,000. All the other ones we had remained flat because it's really hard to find new revenues within governments. You know, you're always doing your licenses, and unless you increase your fees, which usually increases isn't enough to actually give you a whole lot of money, it doesn't translate into really helping you. On the expenditures, like I said, they're going up by the 3% for everything except the health insurance, and that's 11%. And so when you look at that orange line where we had to actually end up averaging about 4.74% each year for the 5 years that we're projecting, that compared to 4.33 last year. You can tell if I'm not getting any more revenues than $20,000 and I've got expenditures going up, you know, almost 4 to 5%, there's no way we're going to keep track. And you see that blue line start showing that levy limits could start impacting you this year by about $318,000. You know, obviously you're going to actually put your budget together. You might find some areas that you can cut. Maybe you'll be able to bring that down. Maybe you'll be able to find a way to get to zero. But that's really your job this year, is to try to make sure that you have a balanced budget. So, you know, as far as the fund balance, you know, as the auditor talked about, I have a number that says, well, that was a 23 number. So I have a number starting in 24 of about 23.7%. But as you can tell, as I start using the fund balance to fund your operations, that obviously goes away and we end up negative. And the next page shows the graph where everything just starts tumbling because we don't have the revenue sources to actually pay for all of our expenditures. So that graph really is levy limits impact on you. If they don't change the formula, there's going to be a lot of levy limit referendums. There already is a couple, I know for sure, in Oregon and Fitchburg, which are, you know, obviously Dane County communities, but there's other places that are hurting as well because they don't have a way to pay for their services. And I think, you know, what really kind of stands out with the legislature is if everybody starts doing them, they got to do something about them. And you know, if they don't care about the services that your residents are getting, you know, you're going to end up having to cut those way back, and people aren't going to be very happy about not having good streets or maybe not having well-groomed parks or whatever. Do you have any questions on operating? Because I'll head into capital if you want.
With the squeezing of the levy limit on our operations, capital purchases of equipment, would it be advisable to stretch out the lifespan of some of that equipment?
Well,
Instead
the
of going
equipment
3 years,
doesn't.
going 4.
Yeah, the equipment doesn't matter because you're outside of the levy limit. Now, what would be the kind of projects that might impact your levy limit would be new buildings where you have to actually staff them.
But you take like road maintenance equipment, that's the part of the operating expense.
Yep.
It's not, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, so
Some
I
of
mean,
that
for
stuff,
let's say
could
we
we
buy
stretch
a
out the
new.
life
Yeah.
to lower the impact per year.
Well, let's hope that you're using your assets for their entire life and that you're not getting rid of them too fast. So that's something that you can always look at. You know, I would say, you know, if possible, especially in these days and age, you drive them as far as you can, and you know, hopefully you can get a good trade in or sell them to somebody that can fix them that can be used for some purpose. But as far as the asset cost itself, that's probably something you're borrowing for because you probably don't have the cash in the general fund to pay for equipment. Okay.
I just have one question, and I have no idea if this is with you or just my general knowledge that I have to learn about. We just recently had new assessments for everyone's property in town. How does that affect, it's like your mill rate and then the levy limit?
Yeah.
How does that all work together? I mean,
So first of all, I mean, theoretically, if everybody has reported all their improvements, their tax bill should stay the same, okay? So really, the levy rate will go down, but you should still collect the same amount of money. So here's where you get your extra money from a reassessment. Somebody doesn't report their improvements. And so if you have an assessor that actually goes into the homes, which I don't know if you do that, you might find new value from people that didn't actually take out a building permit and so forth. So, but if everybody's house stayed the same, you know, their assessment should go up to the market value is, and theoretically, And I'm saying theoretically, because there's always a little difference. It might be you're in a nicer neighborhood where the value's appreciating more. Maybe you're in a part of town where things haven't been kept up and your value doesn't stay. You know, there's gonna be ebbs and flows on who goes up and who doesn't. But theoretically, if everything was in good shape, you would have the same tax bill as you would, you know, if you did do a reassessment.
I was just curious, because I thought, wasn't there like an average percentage that the assessed values went up? And I don't know if that exceeds.
Yeah, and whoever that average person is probably gonna have the same tax bill, whereas the person that maybe is in that nicer subdivision where the values are going up faster, they might end up with a bigger tax bill.
Yeah, I was just curious if it affects this at all.
Like I said, the only way that it's gonna affect you positively is if people didn't take out building permits and you're finding new value.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else on operating? Okay. So we'll go into the next page, and this is the capital listing that staff shared with me. As far as how big this CIP is compared to last year's, it's a little smaller. It's about 22.3 million, whereas we were at 25.8 million last year when we talked about this. But on the levy funded side, we went from, let's see, 12.9 million up to almost 13.9 million. So levy funded projects went up, you know, about $1 million, 900,000 to $1 million. So what that ended up doing is it actually affected how much we were showing as far as a levy increase over the number of years. So on the next page, you can kind of see the impact. Well, it's 2 pages from that. I'll come back. Slide 22 really is where we were at 12/31/23. And so the only thing that's really important on that before I get to that next schedule is we've got about $18 million of debt that is paid for by other funds other than the tax levy. So, or it's paid for by the room tax. So you got room tax, ambulance, and then the TIDs, and the water and sewer utility that are making those payments. So the important thing here is that we've got some debt out there, but it's being paid for, you know, $18 million of the $42 million are paid for by other funds or other funding sources. So that's really the big thing on that page. The next page really is the one that I wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about. The first line, okay. The first line, 2025, is what you can expect for a tax levy for the 2025, after the borrowing that we did in 24. This should be your tax levy. I think, Molly, you had maybe a little bit of difference. There might be a couple revenues that I wasn't aware of doing this that aren't dramatically different. But about $2,060,000 is what your levy would be in 25. What we tried to do is take the list that you have for projects and see, you know, is there an average increase, you know, after, you know, when I went through and first structured the debt, is there an average amount that I could come up to? So what I did is I structured the debt in such a way that I could come up with basically a $130,000 levy. And then in that year after we have our project, so it'd be the 30 borrowing for the paid for in the 31, we try to also leave enough that you could do a borrowing and not increase your levy at all. So what's going to impact this increase in levy and the fact that we have one more year on from what I showed you in May is your project amount. So the way that this tax levy can be affected is by how big your projects are. So if this isn't your final list and that's not the kind of tax levy that you're interested in having and going up to about 2.7 million as your holding spot for what your routine projects are, then that's something that you have to take a look at and see, are those projects ones that are truly your priorities? You know, is there anything that you can do, like maybe doing street projects every other year, you know, whatever, looking at your list and seeing if that 130,000 that gets you up to that 2.7 million, which I think is your ceiling, isn't in what you think is your policy, then you need to make changes to that capital list so that we can try to drive that tax levy down. But with what I have to work with, that's what it's averaging out to. That $29 per property is the same as last year. So anything that's $200,000 in value would have about a $29. So if you have $100,000, it'd be half of that amount. So you could kind of do the math on on how that would affect you over the years. But when you get to that 2031 or 2030, that's the year that you would start having basically a zero increase to those, and maybe even a little decrease because you have growth. Does that make sense? So that's an area that if you have any thoughts about, whether you have the appetite to grow that to a number that can do the type of projects you're doing now, that's the kind of plan that you should continue with. Okay. The next page is the debt capacity. As the auditor talked about, we were around 63% in 2023. We were at 58% in 2024. And then what you'll see is even with what we're showing for new debt over the next 5 years, we're sticking somewhere in the 56 to 60% range with those projects beyond. So, we're actually going to come down from what he showed you because we have had a decent amount of growth within the city to be able to raise that calculation, because you're able to levy general obligation debt up to 5% of your total equalized value, which is the market value of all the property within the city. So as that goes up, so does the levy or the debt capacity. And so, if the way that things are shaking out here is that you're not taking on as much debt as the growth in the debt capacity number. And so it's kind of dropping a little bit or staying stable in the 50%. Now last year when I showed you this, it showed us going 63, 63, 66, 66, 66. So you can see we've had some improvement because of your growth this last year.
Is that policy based on TID in or TID out?
TID in.
Thank you.
Any questions on capital? Okay. So then the next page just shows you what the levy is going to do. Now the kicker on this page is that the state made a change and took all the personal property off of the tax roll, and to kind of give you some money back for that purpose, they gave you an aid payment this year, which is about $100,000 more than what you've received in the past. So we're going from about $83,000 of personal property aid to $180,000 of personal property aid. So whereas if you compare to last year or the report I showed you in May, we've actually, those numbers are all down by about 100,000, which is explained by that. So really our levy for what we're showing going forward hasn't really ballooned from what I showed you in May. Really the only difference is that the state has taken away some of your taxing ability by eliminating the personal property values. The only thing that could come into play is that if the amount of personal property aid that you got doesn't match up to what you used to collect in taxes, it could be there's a little bit of a shift in who's paying for that money or for that taxing amount. So that law change might affect your residents and your businesses a little bit because obviously the businesses aren't paying their personal property, but somebody has to pay that tax. Okay, so we have about a levy increase showing about 2.25%, 2.5% on average going up over the 5-year plan. And then just a couple graphs that show you the levy breakout. With levy limits kind of stifling what you can do in the general fund, it's very obvious that over the 5 years we're going to have a drop in how much the general fund has in the pie. We're also we built in that new debt to be able to handle your capital listing that you have, and so you can see that there isn't the light green in the left graph, but there is, so that's starting to fill in as far as that. But once you get to the point where you're at that spot that you know how much you need to have on hand, that should kind of even out as well. And so I think that at some point you would potentially in 29 that those percentages might be pretty close. The only thing would be is they might go up because the general fund continues to get stagnant. So the next page is just a graph that shows the increase in the levy, which is the orange bars, and then the rate is the green line. And they're basically the same percents, and that's the percent I told you on the levy graph, which were in about the 2.25% to 2.5% increases each year. Then the next graph is just a long bar graph, or an area graph that kind of shows your different levies, the general fund being pretty flat because of levy limits. The existing debt is the green, which is getting paid off over time, and then we're adding on that new debt to actually pay for your new projects. Any questions on the tax levy before I go into TIF districts? Okay. So I found a picture that you had out on your website that had all the TIFs and where they were. So I thought that would be good to throw on here, but we'll go right into the details. I did give you a little narrative on where everything is and what type of a district. I'll just kind of hit the high points here. TIF 8 had about $31 million in new value this year. That was huge. I think when you see TIF 8's projection, you can see that TIF is actually going to do fairly well in the long run. But right now it's got a loan from the sewer utility, which is causing us rating problems. And also, we're holding on some sewer cash that I believe would have made your projection for sewer a lot better looking when the auditor talked about it as well. So, there's a decent amount of cash that's owed by TIF 8 to the sewer utility, and we'll show you how that can be paid off pretty quickly. Get rid of the advance, so that puts a check mark on that item that we needed to get rid of. And all the TIF districts, well, actually all the TIF districts will end up being positive here fairly soon. So, let's see. We did, on TIF 8, we did show that going all the way to its final termination, because I think there's potential for more value out there. So you have new development. It could be that you might have to put in new projects or maybe have incentives for somebody. So we didn't want to put a time on when you're going to close it without knowing for sure that you were done out there. So I'll tell you when we get to that one where it could have closed if you don't do anything else and we just have the values coming in that we have now.
On TID 8, part of that $31 million was the expansion of Cardinal Glass in that Toro. But would that also include Berry Point?
Those were in TID 9, so TID 8 would be the apartment buildings.
TID 9 had about $2.5 million in new value in it. We're showing a closure year of 36, and I can't remember what was 36. What was magical about 36?
Just the debts paid off.
Oh, the debt's paid off, okay. So I mean, that's one where we're showing a year, if nothing else happened out there and you weren't going to do anything else, there is an earlier year you could probably close, and I'll point that out when I get to that one as well. TIF 10 went up about $4.7 million. And let me just say TIF 9 and 10 are the ones that are set up to also share increment with TIF 8, and we'll show you how that helps TIF 8 become healthy. And then and TID 10 really needs to go to the bitter end based on the development assumptions we have, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to that slide. And then TID 11 really doesn't have any obligations, but has like a decent amount of value out there. So if you've got projects out there, that TIF has a decent amount of money, and probably, if you don't have projects, it will be able to close much quicker than what we're showing. I'll just walk through the next page, today's increment projection, just so that you know how it works, and then I won't go through it again. The value that you see on the value added is in the year that it is next to it is when that value got constructed. The next year is when it got valued by the Department of Revenue, and then the next year is the revenue year. So you can see at the end of 2024, which the numbers got updated by the Department of Revenue in August, TID 8 is at about $70 million of value. The tax rate for the last couple of years, actually that's with the new, yeah, that's right. So we have one more thing that's going to pop on in 24, but I think that might have been a correction. But we're at about $70 million of value. The tax rate, I don't have an update because all that gets determined at tax time in December. No, we're in November. So the tax rate we have in here is last year's tax rate, and that's going to get you about $1.3 million in increment each year. So that flows onto the next page, and you can see that $24 million from the orange column on slide 32 to the first column on slide 33 is that revenue. We get a little bit of money from the state government for things like exempt computers and maybe personal property aid. And then you see the amounts that I show coming in from TID 9 and TID 10. The one thing that as I looked at it today when I was preparing to come talk to you, that I think maybe might be a worthy change is to take that amount transferred from TID 10 down a little bit, because as you'll see, I've got TID 10 going out to the bitter end with very little fund balance, and it would be better to have that fund balance in TID 10 be bigger to be able to pivot when we have drops in tax rates, or if the state decides to take the technical college off the tax roll again a little bit like they did about 10 years ago, you know, it'll give us a little bit of flexibility and not end up being in the hole. So that might be a change that we could make in here, is to reduce how much TID 10 is transferring. TID 9 is tapped out as far as development from what Molly told me, and so we could take that value and bump up how much we're transferring out of TIF 9 instead, and give TIF 10 a little bit of breathing room. So if you continue to do projects out here, which we don't have very much in projects listed right now, but if you have growth, you have incentives you want to give out, you know, you can see that this TIF actually starts to accumulate some pretty decent amounts, and so you have the capability of doing something out there with what's coming in the door. So you have the chance to incentivize people to come in here based on the way these numbers are kind of lining up right now. TID 9, we'll just go straight to the cash flow, so we'll pass that one. So you're getting about $500,000 of increment each year. There's a couple of projects that staff have in the capital list that we have in here for doing the borrowing. We show that happening in, looks like 25 and 26. There's some littler projects that we're doing annually otherwise, but we're able to do those. We're able to have a pretty good fund balance. You know, like I said, the donation to TID 8, maybe, you know, you use the rest of that $195,000 in 2025 and take a little bit in 26. It would delay the advance being paid off by maybe a year, but it might be a better thing to do for TID 10's fund balance. But you can see this one, you know, since you don't really have any more development, and you've got, you know, some of the projects that staff had talked about, plus an incentive, which must be Toro, and is it just Toro? Okay, so that's the Toro incentive. You know, there's really a decent amount of money here, but you could, you know, if nothing else happens and you don't have any other projects, we would have enough money to pay off, you know, to close and pay off the incentive, you know, maybe like 2030 if there's nothing else going on. But at this point, we put it at 2036 because that was the end of the incentive, and we'd have enough money to call those bonds early. TID 10. Well, so last year I did not show the second $3 million road project. So as you can tell, this TID actually did really well again, like the other TIDs, and we're up to about an increment of 500,000. So that addition of value allowed us to actually take on that second project that I didn't show in here because you didn't have the capability of doing it. So that has been a big plus as far as what we're showing here. But as you can tell, you know, if I give away that 810,000 in 2024 to TID 8, I get down to next to nothing because, you know, we're still paying off a decent amount of bonds in there, and it's more than we're taking in. And hopefully we'll have maybe some new development in here, and that won't be quite the problem, but it might be worthy of reducing how much we're donating to TID 8 to get that cumulative more, you know, 200,000 plus on that instead of using all that to help TID 8 right away. Instead, making this one have more of a guaranteed health to it.
What's your suggestion? Yeah?
Yeah, I think you could do that because, you know, if you're okay with TID 8 maybe lasting another year and paying the sewer utility that last amount in 2026, you know, we could, you know, put a decent fund balance into TID 10 that can suck up maybe a tax levy decrease unless you're going to have a school referendum. You know, whatever makes the tax rate go up is gonna help you, but most times right now, the tax rate has been going down because of how fast equalized value has been going. And TIF is calculated off of equalized, so.
Is our rating review annually, or is it
Say that again?
our rating review? 'Cause the reason why we want to take care of the sewer earlier is to help our rating review, but how often does that happen?
So if we borrow in the open market, that's when we get a rating.
Okay.
So I think, you know, if we're, you know, if we take a decent chunk out of it in '24, you know, then you're just down to some amounts that are a little bit less, you know, not as big of a one in '25, and we could maybe get it done in '25. It looked like maybe with how much we had left in TID 10 to give out, that maybe we'd wanna, or TID 9 to give out, that we'd wanna maybe go out another year for paying that off and using money from a TID that doesn't really have much left to do in it. TID 11, like I said, it's collecting a bunch of money, but it really isn't paying anything out. Is it missing something? Is there some obligation that, so, you know, I don't know what was in your project plan, I don't have that in front of me. You know, if there's projects to do out there, you've definitely got money accumulating. If there's nothing to do, then, you know, it's obviously something that, if there aren't any more development, you could close this pretty quick. But I put it at the end because I figured maybe there's other things that you needed to do out there, or maybe other developments that could come in that you could incentivize. But really, this thing could close in 2024 if you're not planning on doing anything else. And we missed that date, so you'd have to close it in '25. But is there a bunch of projects in that one that we have left to do?
No.
So maybe
It's
this.
purely speculation, Dave, I think.
Okay. So I mean, it's got a bunch of money coming into it, but you don't have any obligations, and typically that's the rule for closing a TID. So if you don't really have anything else to do there, then I would say before April 15th of '25, you put in your motion to close it with the Department of Revenue. Okay?
What's the advantage to closing it then?
Well, that value would go on the tax roll. You know, obviously the state takes away some of that, so whatever the calculation goes, whatever the increment value is. So on this one we're gonna have about $21 million of value at the end of by 2025, or be valued in 26. If we stayed open that long, I don't know what the $7.5 million is. I don't have the development assumptions in front of me. But if we close it a year early, $14 million would come on. So the formula on the levy limit worksheet says, here's the $14 million, your TID out total value, which I think we calculated earlier, is $914 million. Whatever that percentage is, gets divided in half because the Department of or the state legislature wants there to be property tax relief. And so they artificially take away some of the value to give relief, and then you get that, whatever that is left as a percentage increase on your levy limit. It allows you to increase your operating levy. And that's really all I've got today. I'm happy to answer any questions or go into any more detail if you want to. Or I could leave and you guys could keep going.
So if we close the 11, how much would that add to our income?
Well, somebody could do the calculation of 14 million divided by 914 million.
Or what percent?
That's a percent.
14 million?
14
Yeah, 14 million divided by 914 million. Is it million? Yeah, it is.
1.5.
1.5, so 0.75 would go, so if you took your levy, well, go back to the levy limit worksheet. Go back to the levy limit worksheet.
Okay.
I didn't mean to push you. Or that. It's almost the beginning, isn't it? Can you do the slider on the right?
Yeah, but the mouse is so terrible, I don't want to.
So there's a line on the levy limit worksheet that does the taxes, and we didn't have anything calculated this year, just because we didn't have anything closing. So let's see, it's hidden, it's in here, but what happens is right now, you can see that 0.467 is 19, almost 20,000. So if we got, basically double that, we'd add another, $35,000 to $40,000 to our levy. It's not gonna solve your problem,
That's what I was trying to find out.
but it's something,
substantial.
yeah, it's something.
Which is about enough to put us back to the 25% of
Fund
unassigned
balance.
fund balance. It's very close. I think that's 40,000 off.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item, number 3 on the agenda, is approval of the minutes from August.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve. And a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
They're approved. Next item is the number 4, the city clerk monthly report.
Good evening. Just a few updates from the clerk's office. We did get our ballots for the presidential election. They came from the county on Thursday last week, and we stuffed all the envelopes today, the ones that we've got on file. So if you have an absentee ballot request on file, your ballot should be in the mail tomorrow. We'll be posting them and sending them out tomorrow. And then, of course, we'll be receiving absentee requests as time goes on between now and the election. We had about 375 of them on file right now, but I anticipate we'll be close to 1,000 by November. I'm just guessing, but it's probably where we'll be at. In-person voting, a lot of people call it early voting, is going to start on October 22nd. A lot of people have been asking about when that starts. And we'll run through Friday, November 1st, and we'll be open those Fridays for voting purposes, the 2 Fridays before the election. Joint Review Board meeting is scheduled September 25th at 9:00 a.m. here at City Council Chambers. I'll be getting the agenda out for that next week. It's just annual, there's no decision-making really at that. It's just about getting information. A lot of what Dave covered in the financial audit will probably be covered as well in the presentation about the TIDs. And then just an update on the economic development director, zoning director. Last I heard, we had 14 applicants and there were 5 strong candidates that are likely to be ready for interviews, at least first interviews, screening ones with a recruiter. He will pass along any he believes that are worth interviewing to the set and council. And then just for HR purposes, we are working through 2 sick leave donation requests. For those of you who don't know what that is, for people who work for the city who have been with us a long time or don't have sick time available, they can do a sick leave donation request. There are people who work for the city that never call in sick or ever use their time, and they're nice enough to donate some of their time to the person in need, whether they have to have surgery or something like that, or a long illness. So we have 2 of those going around, and really they're the first ones I've seen in over 4 years that I've been here. We haven't had 2 right at the same time. So working through that process. And then open enrollment, in addition to election staff, open enrollment runs concurrent, and that runs September 30th to October 25th. So, yeah, it's always great in the presidential year. So the next few months will be pretty busy for us. It's going to start ramping up. Well, it already has because ballots are here. So we were getting more and more traffic. One thing that we're having, and I don't know if I need to meet with you again, maybe you'd have a news thing done or something, but I would like everyone to know the residents are receiving mailings in their mailbox, and they have my name on them, or they'll have City Hall's name on them, or I'll have our address on them, and they're sent from random voter interest groups. They could be from political parties. And it says, oh, you need to register, you're not registered. So I've had frantic people coming to the clerk's office this week saying, I got this in the mail and it says I'm not registered, and I look them up and they're registered just fine. So it's causing more panic than anything else. I just want people to know, you can always call me and check. If you wanna know if you're registered or not, I can look it up, it takes me 10-15 seconds, it's not a big deal. I would rather you have peace of mind, but if you're not registered, I'd be happy to help you in the clerk's office, do it online. Yeah, I just don't want people to, they get a lot of junk mail this time of year. Maybe it's not junk, you love reading all the stuff that comes in your mailbox, but my house,
I get one or two of those cardboard advertisements every day, and they go right straight to the recycle bin.
yep,
Yeah,
and,
recycling bin's gotta be, sure.
yeah, is recycling busy at this time of year? So, no, I just wanna kinda let everybody know, don't worry if you get one of those, if it's from me, it will literally have either my signature on it or my first and last name along with a letter. If it just has City Hall address, it was likely sent by some sort of group, and it's spam mail, so. That's about all we're at today. Does anyone have questions for me?
I have a question,
Sure.
and it is in relation to a letter that I got in the mail. It's regarding downtown Thursday night. And kind of confused about the letter because it has Mrs. Solzes as the deputy clerk in this letter, and also it's posted online. Does her position change at all?
Mindy Schulze is my part-time deputy clerk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is she part-time, full-time?
She's part-time.
So her title is deputy clerk also,
Yes.
not assistant?
No.
Okay, because I've never seen that before. So I was just wondering why.
Yeah,
the letter was
she's
like-
a part-time deputy clerk. She has the same job duties as our full-time, but she only works 20 hours a week.
Okay, because there was a couple people were confused about two titles, like for her and also for Nicole.
Yeah, they have the same job.
They have the same title.
Yes.
Okay. Didn't know that.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Next item, treasurer, number 5, September 2024 treasurer report.
So I'm not gonna take any more of your time. I think pretty much everything we covered in the first hour of the meeting is what I have been working on with our advisors. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has. All right, thank you.
Thanks. And then this number 6, the August 31st revenue and expenditures with the comparison to budget.
Sorry, that's just part of my report for you guys to review.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? And now it's number 7, Parks and Rec.
Good evening. Make it short tonight. Parks Department's still busy with their park season rentals, gatherings, weekend rentals, so forth. We still continue to work with the disc golf course group. Have an open house on October 5th. This week we'll have flyers out to the community. Just they'll be down there showing people how to play disc golf and so forth. So look for that in the coming weeks. Recreation Station has been a success so far. We've had a lot of birthday parties since we opened to the public. Thanks to the Public Works Department for giving us a nice new blacktop park in there with park space fees and cell tower fees to the park board. So it's gonna be nice there. We had a lot of trip hazards and we got a lot of little kids that come through there. So it's been great so far for the community. Recreation programs, you can see we started our fall program with football, volleyball, adult softball, co-ed, and co-ed volleyball this past Sunday. This weekend we'll be starting our open gyms on Sundays at the high school and pickleball open gym, so starting to move to our indoor fall programming. Aquatic Center, finishing up maintenance and cleaning of the fall for the Aquatic Center and get things cleaned up to put the rest for the season. Recreation Park, you can see what we've been busy with in August and this month of September. It's our busy time for weddings and then all the big banquets and fundraisers and the different community events out at Recreation Park. The Ice Center project is 99.9% completed, just some hardware on the doors for some of the locker rooms. But the Woodsman and Toma Youth Hockey, the ice is made and they've been programming and it's been busy out there for all the skaters involved with the programs at the ice rink. So other than that, any questions or concerns?
The CWD meeting at Recreation Station. You wanna mention anything about that?
The CW.
Chronic wasting disease with the DNR.
Okay, all I know is that they're using the facility for a meeting, what they're talking about. You know, I don't get into that, so.
Yeah, I forget what the date was.
Yeah, different community groups have been using, which is great for meetings and stuff, so I know the DNR was in there late last week, getting a rental for that, so. Talking about whatever they wanna talk about, I guess, so.
So when are we gonna do the blacktopping, Joe?
What's that?
Where we got the parking lot all dug up for the new wiring and?
Oh, for the bid, for out at Rec Park,
Yeah.
they should be there this week, moving, putting in a new water line there for the vendors and stuff, so sounds like the blacktopping will be in October. So it should be, knock on wood, plenty of time before the big election out there, so. That'll be here this fall, so. That, so. This month, I mean, not this month, October is supposed to come pave, so. Right, all right, thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Next item, number 8, Public Works. Kurt?
As you can see, my report was pretty short. That was planned because I assumed that we're gonna have quite a few people talking here for a long time. I did want to comment on Richard's comment about the cycling of the equipment. When I came here, we were operating about a 16, 17-year rotation, which drove our maintenance costs about to $75,000 a year. So since that time, we've tried to target a 12 to 14-year cycle, and that has cut our annual maintenance cost in half, which is real dollars that are levied that really impact us. So that's a little bit of our philosophy. There are exceptions to that. Some of the equipment we need to really keep some redundancy with, and you guys saw that with our sale to Warren's. That helps us extend the life and, of those pieces of equipment. For the street department, the binder course has been put down on West Veterans. The contractor's back in there shaping up and putting in the boulevards, grass areas, and I believe Chippewa is back in, and they will complete all the sidewalk and concrete that is left. So that should be done this week. And then the projected final surface course for the asphalt will be in October, kind of piggybacking off of what Joe said. That's probably be one of the last times that we see blacktop in the city. So, sewer department operations are all normal. Water department, well number 10 is back in operation. That rehab ran around $80,000, just to put that in perspective. We did get some good results. We got about another 100 gallons per minute out of that well, so it was well worth it, no pun intended. And Lake Committee, their next meeting is this Thursday here in this chamber. I believe I have 5:30 on there, but it's 5 o'clock. And I did want to touch on the free e-recycling event. It's at the Aquatic Center parking lot. That's this Saturday from 9 to noon. Very successful, helps us out quite a bit with our cost. So take all your electronics there, TV monitors, projection of wood console TVs, desktop computer towers, cell phones, batteries, hard drives, desktop printers, keyboards, satellite receivers. The list goes quite extensive, so take advantage of that, please, and tell your neighbors and constituents.
Did you say wood council TV?
Yeah, we still get a few, but they're very few and far between. It's coming to an end. Any other questions?
I still got the one at the farm. I use it as a TV stand.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
the TV stand.
Next item, number
But
9,
it's got the
Police
smart
Department.
TV on top of it.
Good evening. Quick staffing update. We had a sergeant process to include external candidates. We had 0 applicants. Patrol officer position is now open to fill an anticipated opening towards the beginning of the year. We have one application so far. Officer Brandon Bellicero, he's in our step 5 of our field training process. That is solo patrol. He's on his own now. He's made it through the previous 4 steps where he's got to establish that he's a competent police officer for those stages, and he's now on his own. Officer Brad Hoffman, he's currently in the academy. He's doing very well. We have high praises from the academy staff there, to include the director. She reached out and said he's been doing very well. He's going to graduate beginning of October, and will then start the field training process with us. We've been working with SET on the 2025 budget process. Has been a little bit new to me, but very nice. SET's great to work with, and they've helped me understand some of this, the numbers game, which tonight's been interesting. I want to thank Kirk and his team for noticing that we had our flagpole was not straight. They brought that to our attention and they fixed that for us. That was nice. Thank you. September 12th was Police Women's Day. We recognized 4 of our female staff members via Facebook for their service and dedication to the city. Now that school is back in session, there's obviously an increase in school patrol. We have for approximately 19 years now, the officers are required, unless they're on a call for service, they're required to be in the school zones. And we have many of those, but that's where they're required to be. They're required to call that out, and they do that on a daily basis. We've also increased how they do that, parking their cars, getting out, so they're more visible. We will have officers posted at school as needed. We want to remind the public, everything's, knock on wood, everything's been going well. The first couple of weeks are usually pretty hectic with traffic, people getting used to their patterns and trying to slow down in those areas. They're very congested in some of those, and they've been doing very well. We just want to remind them to continue to do that, please. I assisted with the Tomera School District, all staff members, to include custodial, everybody. There's over 500 staff members. I presented with Michelle Clark, the business director, on how they respond to an active attack or an active threat that presents at the school, and that was received very well. And that is all I have. Any questions? Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks. Moving on to the general part of the agenda, item number 10, special beer and wine license application by the Toma Lions Club for downtown Thursday nights in July and August of 2025.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item, number 11, special event outdoor cabaret license for the Greater Toma Area Chamber of Commerce for the 800 and 900 blocks of Superior Avenue for 6 downtown Thursday nights. Oh, I just got reminded I didn't say opposed for the last item. So I should say, any opposed for that first one for the Lions Club beer and wine permit? Not hearing any? Motion carries. Second time. Item number 11, special event outdoor cabaret license for the Greater Toma Area Chamber of Commerce for the 800, 900 blocks of Superior Avenue for the 6 downtown Thursday nights concert events in July and August of 2025.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Item number 12, recommendation to remove the 15-mile restriction from chapter 26 of the Toma Personnel Manual to allow for a K-9 unit officer to keep a city-owned vehicle at his or her residence.
Question for the assistant chief. Do you have a candidate that's presently living outside that limit that you're looking at?
You can't, no, we do anticipate, we take receipt of the new K-9 beginning of 2025, so we have to start that process. And essentially what we want is access to all of our sworn personnel and a larger pool of candidates. It's a very sought after position, an immense amount of responsibility, and we just want to have access to the entire sworn staff.
Is this one that we're taking possession of new replacement or in addition to?
It's, well, in addition, and it's a replacement for the canine that we had that was struck by a vehicle. We will have two. Canine Victor is currently in service, and he's his handler. Sergeant Adam Perkins believes it's about another year and a half of service.
I'll make a motion to approve.
How far are we gonna remove the 15 miles? So if somebody in Milwaukee wants to take the dog home, they can, or is we gonna put some limit on it? What are you asking for?
Well, currently the city does for non-canine, it is statewide. Most of our personnel reside outside the city of Toma limits. We're requesting that there is no limit to allow us to bring in most of our other staff. We don't have anybody that lives further. We're about to have one employee who's going to live in Norwalk. I think the furthest is Holm, Chief Holm. Beyond that, most are in West Salem, Sparta, Warrens.
So within a 50-mile radius would probably cover it too.
I believe so. And that is, I reached out to my command college group for Certified Public Manager group and asked them, majority of them, they don't have a limit. Waukesha even, they have one that lives outside their county. Two had the 15-mile. Appleton has a 25-mile. If you're beyond that, you have to essentially meet up store squad somewhere at that 25-mile mark and then come in, get your squad and your dog. But most do not have a restriction on that.
So we have a motion to approve, and do we have a second?
I'm not sure what we're approving.
I can go over this a little bit because it's the personnel handbook. It says right now that if you have a canine, if you're one of the canine officers, and when you have a canine, you need a special vehicle, right? I mean, and in order to be able to take your vehicle home, which you have to do because you take the dog home.
Right.
Our policy right now says that if you can only live 15 miles away. But the problem is the majority, almost all of our police officers live farther away than that. So we want to be able to choose from more people to have the right person have the canine, because right now our choices are really limited because there's only very
So
few.
we're not looking at extending the miles, are we?
No, we're looking at getting rid of it as the miles, because some people live in Sparta, some people live in Holman. We want to be able to let any of them maybe be the canine.
What would the budgetary effect be? Because we're paying the gas, right? So if they gotta go 150 miles, we're gonna pay the 150 miles both ways. And that's why I say we should have some kind of limit on it, not necessarily unlimited.
Yeah, I mean, typically, people who work here aren't gonna live 150 miles away and commute
I
every
agree.
day.
I agree, but it's potential. If we put at least a 50-mile limit on it, it should, he said that would cover everybody.
Do you have a restriction for the length an officer can live from work? Or is
No, that was modified 2013, it's statewide.
I mean, just so that we look at it, because the budget, we'd be paying the gas.
So, do you have any officers what's the farthest in here?
I think it's the chief in Holman, excluding him. I think the Norwalk is, we have an officer anticipated to reside there probably by the end of the year. We have 2 or 3 in West Salem, 1 in Sparta.
So 50 miles are pretty much a 50-mile radius.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
The canine has to go with the owner, I mean, not
With
with
the handler.
No, I mean, where the officer goes, the dog goes, I mean. Do you know who's gonna be in charge of the canine?
The next one, no, we do not. Not yet. I mean, we do plan soon, within the next month or so, to start that process. Essentially inquire as to who's interested. We obviously know some are interested, but those spots are highly sought after. So there's gonna be some competition for that.
So you're doing this to try and get the best candidate to be a K-9 versus the one that lives the closest?
Correct. So if, hypothetically speaking, if we have a candidate who is exactly what we want for this handler and they live in Sparta or West Salem, we can't include them currently unless you approve that.
I guess we don't have an option at this point. I mean, the K-9 has to go with the handler. They live in Homa. You know.
So we have one motion and looking for a second.
Unless we would get more information from the chief and bring it back next month.
I'll second it.
Yeah, you can
Oh, I could do a second.
Yarrington,
Now you can discuss it.
Okay. Any further discussion?
So what's the motion on the table?
Just as is written, and it says, recommendation to remove the 15-mile restriction from chapter 26 of the Tacoma Personnel Manual to allow for a K-9 unit officer to keep a city-owned vehicle at his or her residence.
Just take the miles out.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Aye.
So we have, should we see a show of hands?
yeah, who was,
The ayes,
who said no?
3 noes.
Peterson,
Richard,
And Paul.
Yarrington,
And Paul.
and Dwyer, no. And we had Schulze, Divine, Pater, and Glenn, so motion carries.
motion carries.
Thank you.
The next item is the committee of the whole, item number 13, K-9 training, Canada. Guess you're probably back up. K-9 training for Canada, it's the next item, number 13.
We need approval for that to go outside the state of Wisconsin.
Where it's at, right?
Correct.
That's where the K-9 is at. Looking for a motion to approve that.
I make a motion to approve it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Item number 14, August 31st, 2024 cash and investment schedule.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Any further discussion?
Question for Molly. I noticed in here you have several CDs with 2022 maturity dates. Have they been renewed or is that just a typo?
Oh. Typo. Yeah, sorry, the FMB has been renewed, it's an automatic renewal every year. The other one is a Pershing, and I believe, yeah, that's just a typo. Same amount, just not the right renewal date, so I can fix that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 15, resolution authorizing payment of monthly bills.
Move to approve.
Motion approved. We have a
Second.
And we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Question. Maybe Kirk can answer this. What is the waterways and you had 2 bills there for almost
That was,
$14,000?
Wetlands delineation study that we did on a few city-owned properties to see if they would be developable in the future.
Which properties was that?
The one near the airport that was donated by farmers, and the other was the Cooper property in the industrial park.
And when do we get the results of those studies?
We have them,
I mean, the council.
I guess upon request. You can see them anytime.
So we
I
have,
never knew the studies were even done.
So there's another study for the project on King Avenue, which is a sewer project. Another study for the property that the sewer department bought next to the auto body on Town Line Road. I believe that we indicated that we were gonna go out and do these studies so we know what property that we held, what we could do with it to develop it. I don't know exactly when that was stated, Richard, but that's what was said. So the property on the ed of Manawa looks a little bit promising as far as possibly putting 3, 4, maybe 5 duplexes on there. And what we've discussed is putting that out for a RFP, maybe to local developers or some of these other developers that contact us. Joe, for Parks and Rec, has had some money donated to him for a dog park, and we wanted to know what the Cooper property held as far as what we could build on it, or put a dog park on there, or maybe put the dog park down on the further end of the East Manawa property. The treatment plant that purchased the property out on Town Line Road next to the auto body shop, we have a project to relocate and eliminate a lift station on the corner by Toro. And we bought that property so we didn't have to just get an easement. We own the entire property. That included delineation around where we stockpile our concrete and asphalt. And what we've learned is we've got quite a bit more area there to work with. And we're probably going to start clearing that over the winter in our downtime. I mentioned the King Avenue project. That's a sewer project that was just done for follow the correct procedures for the projects with the DNR and through Town and Country. I believe that that's a good summary of what we've done with that. So on those bills, at least 2 of the bills would have been paid for by the sewer because of them owning the property and putting a project on that property, and then King Avenue as well. And I believe the other money was pulled out of the Economic Development Fund.
Yeah, that's the 2 I seen.
Yep. And I have the printouts for what the footprint looks like that is actually developable, that can be developed when I read like them.
How much of it ended up being wetland?
I don't know those numbers right off the top of my head. There were a few isolated areas, but in general, it's just on the Manawa, it's just along Sime Avenue, where it's a sizable piece and would kind of blend in with the neighborhood to put some apartments there or duplexes. The Cooper property was, I think if I remember right, somewhere between 5 and 7 acres that could be developed. And the other one, basically that field that we maintain is for the most part all out of the wetlands. There's a little bit isolated in there, but the bigger one was over by the concrete pile that we could capitalize on that and expand that area for use.
The Cooper property, that's in TID 8, right? Or TID 9? TID 9.
9. Yep.
we can look at that with Kirk sometimes. So thanks. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 16, discussion on TID 8, facade, whatever, facade, whatever improvement grant program.
So I kind of brought this up a few times in my report, but to address some of the citizen concerns about our dilapidated storefronts in downtown, we started a discussion on creating a grant program. Originally in 2019, the city borrowed $250,000 for a to-date facade improvement program. There were 2 loans that were made in that year and it hasn't been used since. So not a real popular program. So what we're proposing is that we take a portion of the money that we have set aside for those loans, not all of it, but a portion, and offer a one-time grant program where we would give local businesses up to $10,000 to cover 75% of the cost of their facade improvements. So that would include signs, windows, basically anything on the front of their building. And the document that I included kind of outlines the specifics. What we're looking for tonight is kind of any feedback that you may have, and if you would recommend, then we would move this on to Planning Commission. They would be the first round of approval that we would need, and then it would come back to council. But before we do too much work on it, we just kind of wanted to get your input to see if it's something that you guys want to pursue, or if we should just kind of quit working on it.
I
What
have
are
a couple
the-
of questions.
Oops, one at a time. Which one was?
Go ahead, Molly.
When you say a portion, how much is, what,
So we currently have about $150,000 sitting and available to be lent out. We would propose that we take $100,000 of that. And then when that money is gone, so that would mean we could do 10, then the program would cease. And the remaining funds, we have $50,000 sitting there on top of what we're collecting on the outstanding loans.
so is that grant anything, is that like free? No?
Yes, it's a grant, it goes to them. They
Okay.
do not have to repay that.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
The only thing I would just jump in for a second, Nellie, is that they have to agree that they would pay a portion, I mean, they would still have a cost, like you said, we said something.
Up to 75% is what we would pay. So if their project is less than 10,000, they're not going to get the full 10,000. They
Okay.
get 75% of their
If they're
project cost.
doing 75,000, we're gonna give them 10,000
Yeah, toward
as
that
an
project.
incentive for
Yes.
doing the project.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So I guess any input, we could change the amount that we would give. We can change the amount that for the overall grant program, or we could change that percentage of what our share would be. So again, this is what we came up with.
So if you get 25 businesses to do that,
So
how would you feel them out?
It'd
Would
be
it depend on the project they're
It'd
doing?
be a first come, first served.
Oh,
And then also, the feedback that we're hearing, you would think that people would be knocking down our doors to do this, but we probably will have to go out and campaign. We'll probably have to go door to door and say, hey, we'll give you $10,000 if you put a new sign up. You know, people aren't just going to, because they do have to spend some money as well, so, and there's some work involved, so, yep.
Start.
So,
And you said this was gonna go to the planning commission?
Planning
And
commission.
they'll look at it and maybe change these numbers to
Yes.
what is recommended before it come back to us?
Yes, and one of the,
We don't need to discuss that
No,
tonight.
no.
That's what-
just what I'm looking for, again, I hate to put, Vandewall's helping us, so we don't want to put too much time and effort into it if you guys aren't at least somewhat in
it's a
favor of these
worthwhile
terms.
I think it is too.
I
Okay.
think it's a great idea to spruce
I
up
think
the
it's very
downtown.
worthwhile.
Okay, so I guess then if you guys would want to vote on a recommendation to move it forward, then that's all we're looking for tonight. Yeah, sorry.
When are you gonna start that, 2025 or?
You know, as soon as we can get it rolled out. In my mind, I thought we're gonna get it going in September, but it's a long process. So as soon as we can get it going.
It sounds like a good project, but how can you be fair to all the businesses outside of the TIF 8 district?
This is a TIF 8 program. We have funds available in TIF 8. We
But
borrowed this.
Are you going to turn around and do a similar program in the rest of the city, businesses?
TIF 8
Be
is
fair to all.
TIF 8 is a redevelopment district, and so this is the purpose of the TIF, is to redevelop existing properties in our downtown corridor. So that is the purpose of the TID. This project falls in line with our TID plan document.
So we have to have a motion to move it forward to the planning commission?
I make a motion to approve it.
So we have a motion,
I'll second.
and we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
So it's moving on to the planning commission. Thank you. Item number 17, special beer permit application by the Tomo Firefighters Association for Hunter's Night Out on November 2nd.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Can you slow down just a second? I'm sorry, I
Sure.
can't type that fast.
Sorry.
Who made the first motion for the firefighters?
No.
If I did her on the
Nelly.
second.
Dean and Nellie.
I think Nellie had the second, and Dean.
Nellie.
No,
second.
thank you, sorry.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Thank you.
So that motion carries.
Quick.
No, that's good, thanks. So number 18, ordinance rezoning property parcel number 286-02651-5301.
What property is
This is, I believe, the duplex that wants to go in. It's there on an agricultural right now. And
Is that the property next to Pizza Hut?
No.
no,
it's
this is
not.
the one I think closer to the downtown. It's,
It's along the on-ramp,
Sorry.
east of Cranberry Lodge.
that? Oh,
wait,
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Second.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 19, ordinance to create an ordinance committee.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
So Penny's not here tonight, real quick, I just thought I'd mention, she'll be here tomorrow if you have more questions, but it sounds like she just kind of added whatever it was that was requested in the last meeting, adjusted it a little bit, and is bringing it back, so that's what this is.
Yeah, there will be recommendations.
Yep, and there'll be recommendations for who's being appointed to these committees tomorrow night.
Motion to adjourn.
No, you can't.
Oh,
Yeah,
We should vote.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
There you go. Second.
A second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Weird, you?
We are gonna slap you if you keep that up. Call the meeting to order. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Paul Dwyer,
Here.
Travis Schulze,
Here.
Richard Yerington,
Present.
Sean Zabinski,
Here.
John Glenn,
Here.
Nicole Hart, here, Patrick Devine,
Here.
Nellie Pater, here, Dean Peterson.
Here. Okay, is there anyone desiring to appear before the council? Seeing none, we'll move on to the senior executive team monthly report.
So you have a report in front of you. Some of the highlights are, we met with Vanderwall to work on the facade grant improvement program. Got a taste of that last night. We wanted to get that input before we move forward with that. We're in the process of creating developers checklist and economic plan and checklist for our website. ongoing communications with developers, landowners regarding residential commercial development. Tomorrow morning, we have a meeting with 4 investment groups. That's the name, FORE, Investment Group. And we've also been in contact with Workhorse Development. Both of those are targeting residential development through the WIDA program. We're getting quite a few hits on this. It must be that time of year for them to try to find these places to head into. Met with a large box retailer for an infill project. We filed for the grant for the airport. We had that resolution passed last month. We're working with CBS Squared on a potentially up to $100,000 grant for cybersecurity initiative. We had our quarterly business meeting with 3RT as well, and we've begun the budget process with the department heads, and we were able to attend the annual chamber golf outing. Is there any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt. We'll move on to the public safety August monthly report.
Good evening, everyone. You have my written reports. Just to highlight both departments, a couple bullet points here. Both departments continue to run record number of calls every month, and I'm definitely seeing it on the fire side of the budget. As for man hours, fuel, those type of items. So again, going into the next budget cycle, that's something we're going to have to focus on, because every year we continue to run more and more calls. So it's just the nature of the beast, I guess, as the community grows. Fire department last Friday evening responded to the 3rd structure fire of the year. It was at 205 Green Acres Avenue. Detached garage. A gentleman was working on his moped, sparked some fuel. Within 3 to 4 minutes, the thing was completely engulfed. Definitely spread radiant heat into the adjacent living quarters, which deemed it a total loss. And then there was also damage to 2 vehicles and the neighboring residence. So yeah, it was quite an intense fire. There was multiple 20-pound LP cylinders that levied and blew up. Again, this all happened within 3 to 4 minutes of the initial fire starting. I got full video of the thing, and you can actually see it, how it grew so fast and intense. So again, fire inspectors are out working on their 2nd round of inspections. You know, with what's going on, we continue to try to do better and better inspections. Again, we do a lot of our inspections with a group of people that have other jobs, so they're, you know, trying to fit it in between Jeremy and I also going out doing our inspections. But we do 14, 15, 1,600 inspections a year, so it's a lot to keep up with a couple people. So unfortunately, I've been asked in the spring to go and give a presentation to the Wisconsin State Firefighters and Wisconsin State Fire Chiefs Association on downtown fires. So it's not a surprise that I was asked to do this, but it also happens all over Wisconsin and all over, you know, America. Unfortunately, Loyal, Wisconsin just lost 3 buildings last Friday, so due to a downtown fire. So unfortunately, that happens. EMS wise, we're setting well on our staffing levels. Again, as I indicated, call volume is just continues to be larger and larger every month, and we're definitely going to break some records for the year here. On August 29th, I held the annual Tomari Ambulance Service annual meeting with the city, villages, and townships that we serve. We talked about the per capita rate that we review every year, and this year for 2024, it's at $20. The recommendation was to hold it at $20, and I think we're financially setting very well, and everybody was pretty pleased on keeping that at one rate for a year, because we've been jumping it up a number of times over the past 3 to 5 years here. So I think everybody was pretty pleased with that. quick update, got off the phone today with Everest, that's our vendor for our remount on our ambulance. That's been there since February 7th. They are working on the graphics, a few other small details, again, hoping 2 to possibly 3 weeks before we pick that up. I'm hoping to timeline this with the pickup of the ambulance that was spoken on last month, that was approved down in Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin. We saved a little over $6,000 on purchasing that we were going to end up buying anyway in November, December. So I'm hoping to get that one back up here to Toma, and then we'll drop that off in Minneapolis when we pick up the current one that's getting remounted, and do it in one flop and save some mileage and time. Other than that, that's all I got. Any questions?
Was that approved by, the other, service?
It was, yes. Thank you.
Thanks again. Library. Oh, there she is. I didn't see her.
Good evening, Irma.
Excuse me?
Good evening.
Good evening to you. Good evening, everybody. In August, we checked out 1,999 ebooks. We checked out 5,020 physical items for a total of 7,019 items checked out from the Toma Library in August. New books at the library have new cooking books, new travel books, new quilting books. If you have other interest and you want to let us know, give us a call. We'll consider it. We hosted a comic book workshop on September 4th for children. It went very well, and we're considering having another one for adults. And I will let you know when that comes up if any of you are interested. We had another houseplant swap on the 14th. We keep having these houseplant swaps, and they're really popular, you wouldn't think, but actually when we advertise it on our sign, people come in the library, they're excited. We also have board games now for checkout for people, and if you have a library card, you can check those out for 3 weeks. We were given a donation of Frisbee golf discs, and we also have those for checkout. You can check them out with your library card for 1 week. On September 19th, 2 days from now, we will have a musical story time for toddlers before the library opens at 8:15. We'll do that again on September the 26th. September the 27th, we will have Crantastic Story Time with Mr. Dave. I don't know what it's going to consist of, but with cranberries in it, should be fun. Don't forget our ongoing events at the library. We have Legos on Tuesday nights, Monday night story time at 6:30, Tuesday at 10, and then again at 11:15 for toddlers. And on Wednesdays, we have 10 a.m. story time for babies. Exciting news in the adult department. We will be hosting the Manhattan Short Film Festival. This will be the 3rd year that we're doing this. So what it is 10 short films, and we are screening those on 8 different days. So if you can't come to one day, you can come to another one of them. I have some literature to give you about that. Anywho, they're the best of the best short films, allegedly, and they're from all over the world. We hosted, the first time we hosted it, we had a few people come, and then last year we had more people, and we just keep hoping that it keeps growing. This event is funded by a generous donation from the Friends of the Library, so thank you for that, Friends of the Library. I have kind of a bad update about the stairs. We were hoping we would be having them done fairly soon, but I spoke to the mason today, and they're waiting for some supplies. Apparently, the people supplying those supplies have a broken machine, and I don't know how long it'll be. But we'll keep you updated. Does anybody have any questions for me? Nothing? Okay. I will get that information for you about the Manhattan film. I'll hand it out.
Thanks, Emma. So we'll move on to the Chamber and Chamber Visitors and Bureau.
Good evening, everyone. Excited to have wrapped up our busy summer activities, and we are knee-deep into fall already. We continue to achieve really good engagement with all of our tourism promotions and social media engagements that we've been doing. And I'll talk a little bit to some of that numbers, on some of those numbers. Since the beginning of this year, we've had over 160,000 Facebook reaches, over 2,000 Instagram reaches, over 7,000 visits to our Facebook page. And a lot of those are linking on to our area businesses, our area events, certainly our website. One thing that's unique that our analysts are seeing is that a lot of people are engaged in our Chamber Chatter newsletter and our events page, which a lot of times those like kind of get glossed over a bit. I'm sorry, might get glossed over a little bit. But TOMA is unique in the way that a lot of people are looking to our engagements for things going on in the area and those subsequent referrals. So really exciting numbers to see. Really exciting numbers to see. Let's see here. We're planning our area guide for next year already. It's a process that starts pretty early so that we can have it out by about February of next year. As a reminder, we distribute about 35,000 copies of that, both in the area to Fort McCoy, Volk Field, along the 90-94 corridor, and local businesses as well. We anticipate, again, this year will run out once kind of CranFest and that season gets through. As usual, we are experiencing an uptick in visitors during the CranFest season, largely due to agritourism, Amish, fall colors, CranFest, excuse me, those kind of things. So typically we do all of our promotion in the beginning part of the year, and all of our visitors come at the end of the year, so our budget typically balances out a little bit, although our area is lagging a little bit in hotel stays this year, largely due to the developments at Fort McCoy and what that's done to our local hotels. So I know that they're seeing a pinch there. Lastly, you've heard me talk about our leadership program that we have going again this year. I bring it up specifically because we kicked it back off again. We took a break for the summer, kicked it back off again last week, and that session was specifically on tourism and agriculture, and we had really good input from the participants in the program. We were able to tour Parks and Rec and talk about the impact of Recreation Park to the area, Tractor Pull to the area, go out to CranFest and talk about what tourism does for our area. And it was a really, I think, great eye-opener for those people that don't understand how tourism works and room tax and how those partners all work together to bring people to our area. So, any questions for me on any of that? All right, as always, my door's always open. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to Senior and Disabled Services. Pam?
Good evening. You have my report in front of you. Some highlighting some of the areas. We have vendor spaces available yet for the Arts and Craft Fair, which is Saturday, November 23rd. The deadline to sign up is November 8th. The numbers for August, usage was 1,738 plus, and volunteers was 190 plus. The music for the rest of the month, September 20th, this Friday, is Blaine Meyer. Lots of times he brings Gary Felber too, and that's quite a duo for music. Michael Slater on the 27th, and then October 4th is Kate Roberts. And looking ahead, well, we just had, and the turnout was good. We had Flock's Guardian come with assisting with energy assistant programs. And then looking ahead, we have a program on Tuesday, October 8th, Take the Mystery Out of Medicare for the public. And on October 18th, Medicare Advantage plan changes. On October 30th is the flu immunization clinic from 12:30 to 1:30. These are all at the Cooper Rush Senior Center. And then on October 30th from 12:30 to 3:30 is the Medicare drug plan reviews. That's one-to-one assistance for those who need that or would like that. On October 15th is Medicare Advantage plans by Harvey Lewis Insurance Agency, United Healthcare. And October 17th and 31st and November 14th is Medicare Advantage plans with Jerry Tiffany of the Tiffany Insurance Group. So those are upcoming programs for service for the people who would like to take advantage of it. Before the next council meeting is Sunday Fun Day for October, and that's on Sunday, October 6th at the Senior Center, and we'll be doing Halloween games and crafts. And then in November, it will be bowling. And the Toma Area Community Halloween Party is coming up October 31st. I sent out letters for sponsorships, and we need volunteers. So I'm having a crunch this year on volunteers, so if anybody's interested, please contact me. The Art and Craft Fair is November 23rd, like I said earlier, and we do need volunteers for that. A celebration next door to us. We rent out the building next door to JNC Latin Grocery Store, and it doesn't seem like a year ago I was in front of you saying, please do this contract for renting, and they have their first year anniversary on October 9th at 1 o'clock. So that's pretty good. And for Halloween, I keep coming back to Halloween. The Halloween community party is free and for our community people, and it's 4:30 to 6:30. 5:15 is costume judging for all ages, 0 to 100 plus. And we have age categories, and it's the cutest, the most original, and the scariest. And we invite everybody to come on down. And the city trick-or-treat hours this year are 4 to 7.
Is it 4 to 7?
4 to 7 this year.
Okay, that's different.
Yeah. I know in the past the council was concerned about how late things got, so I moved it up an hour. And so the party is at 4:30 to 6:30, and trick-or-treat is from 4 to 7, so that people can come to the party but yet go to Grandma and Grandpa's house or the neighborhood or whatever. So, any questions?
You put me down for volunteer to help set up on the 23rd.
On Friday the 22nd.
The 22nd, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard.
1 o'clock, right?
Yeah. We close in November, just to explain that. The Saturday the 23rd is at our Arts and Craft Fair. And so Friday the 22nd, the day before, we close the Senior Center at 12:30 after lunch. And then we start loading up things, and we need volunteers to help load and transport things to Recreation Park so we can set up Friday afternoon. Vendors start coming in at 3 to 5, and then in the morning again 7 to 9. So it gets kind of very tight in scheduling, and we appreciate when people come and volunteer and help us. Okay? Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Okay, thanks Pam. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes from the August 2024, 20th, 2024. Special event outdoor cabaret license for the Greater Toma Area Commerce for 800, 900 blocks of Superior Avenue for 6 downtown Thursday night concert events in July and August. A special beer and wine license application for the Toma Lions Club for downtown Thursday nights in July and August of 2025. Special beer permit application by Toma Firefighters Association for Hunter's Night Out on November 2nd, 2024. August 31st, 2024 cash and investment schedule.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. So we'll move to the committee of the whole. Resolution for authorizing payment of monthly bills.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Ordinance to create ordinance committee. And we're
Motion
looking
to waive the first reading.
Second.
We have a motion to waive the first reading and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Looking for a motion to waive the second reading and go to adoption.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We need to adopt, we need a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We have agenda number 8 is Toma K-9 Unit Officer Vehicle Policy Change Approval. Looking for a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I have a question on that. Where's the current, do we have a current dog in our area? And how far is that, or how far are they traveling?
He lives outside the city limits, south about 5 miles. I think it's Hockey or Hawk. Hockey.
And then do we have a backup? Is there a backup officer when that officer is not available?
That's the idea behind our request with this, is to,
Okay.
currently, no, we do have a K-9 on order, getting trained now in Canada. We're looking to take possession of the K-9 early 2025.
So, what is your backup? I didn't, that was never mentioned yesterday in discussion. So how'd that work with a K-9 officer? So, is it because he's too far out, and how's the backup work in all this?
When you are saying backup, what are you referring to?
I'm referring to, what, Sean.
There's only one handler for the K-9.
We currently have one K-9 with one handler. We have a second dog, we'll have 2. We have a second one, I'm sorry. We have a second one that we'll take possession of in 2025, and we need a handler for that dog.
Oh, okay, so you have 2 K-9s.
Correct.
So we're kind of off topic here, so let's get back on track. So we have a motion and a second.
Is it possible, instead of amending the ordinance, if they should select someone that lives beyond the 15-mile limit, we can waive that requirement at that time, like we did for his chief?
If I may, real quick, this is not an ordinance change at all. This is a personnel policy change. This is in the City of Toma Personnel Policy Manual, and they already have, you have already approved the waiver of the chief for a vehicle. And I guess, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I spoke a little bit with the chief, and if you're not willing to waive that, maybe, because I know the discussion last night was we should put a limit on it. I think they're amenable to that, you know, a 50 to 75 mile radius would be able to at least let them operate with that program and to have it still be successful. So if you would be in, you know, think about considering that, I think amending it to a certain amount of mileage, just to let them be able to operate would be sufficient. I don't think we're looking for the moon or anything, it's just, you know, they want to be able to make sure that they have plenty of people to pick from to get this, a suitable candidate for the next canine officer, instead of only having, you know, one or two options. They want to have a bigger selection process.
Well, I personally think that any of our officers is eligible, but I still think we need to prefer to have it closer in, because you're talking extra mileage, more expense to the city. You're also talking longer response time when he's off duty.
And I spoke with Chief Fulham last night, and if the council does not vote in favor of our current request, we would ask for a motion to adopt the mayor's proposition of 50 miles. That still allows us to do what we want and effectively manage the program while still having a limit. That's certainly, we don't have anybody past 50, and I think the closest is Holman, and that's the chief.
I do like the idea of 50 miles. I think that's, you know, farther out, I mean, it's a durable mileage.
We agree 100%. That would be what we're requesting at this point.
So I guess if everybody feels comfortable with the 50 miles, I'd like to have somebody amend the motion to a 50-mile radius of Toma.
I'll make a motion to amend it to a 50-mile radius within Toma.
I'll second it.
Oh, wait, Travis is the one that made the motion.
Yeah, exactly, sorry. So-
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Actually, you made the motion, John, and then Travis seconded.
Oh, okay,
That's why I asked you.
okay, I'll do it. 50 miles.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion was amended and seconded. All right, good.
So we have a motion and a second to amend the policy. Is there any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Now, correct to Robert's rules, we just amended that motion. We haven't passed the motion yet.
Correct. Well, that amendment passes. Now we're gonna go back to it, and I need the motion to put the policy into place, so I need somebody, I'm looking for a
We already
motion.
have that on the floor. You just have to vote on it again. The motion as amended.
Okay, so we'll vote on the motion as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We move on to number 9, canine training in Canada.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. So we'll move on to the committee planning commission is an ordinance for rezoning property parcel number 286-02651-5301. I'm looking for a motion to waive the first reading.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We're looking for a motion to waive the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to waive second reading. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Now, we're looking for a motion to adopt.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We're going to move on to appointments. Agenda number 11, appointment of Dean Peterson, Nellie Pater, Sean Zavinski, Paul Dwyer, Chris Pop, Molly Powell, and Penny Precor to the ad hoc committee to research a city administrator.
Make motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item number 12, appointment of James Stroh, Mike Weber, Helen Stein, John Glenn, Patrick Devine, Paul Dwyer, and Penny Precor to the ordinance committee.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
May I be recognized?
Yes?
So we just passed an ordinance. I just want to clarify that Paul Dwyer, Penny Precor, and set chairperson are in that ordinance as ex officios, not members. And just want to clarify if it is James Stroh or James Stroh II.
I don't have that information. I have James Stroh. Okay, the second. It's duly noted. We have a motion and a second. Did we pass it or not?
You need to amend it, I believe, to include those things.
I think, isn't that how our ordinance reads?
I think so.
But it specifically says city attorney and mayor, I believe.
And set chairperson, or
Right.
designee.
Right. So,
I can put it in the minutes if you want. I can add that to the minutes, just so that it's in there and clarify the set chairperson, mayor, and city attorney are ex officio. Is that correct?
yeah, it's
Yes.
already by ordinance, so I
Okay.
think that's fine.
Can
by
you just
ordinance.
mention it?
Sure.
Didn't vote yet.
So all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We'll go to the general. Approval of disallowance of claim.
So, not sure what the plan is. Is that,
Penny, did you want me to cover or do you want me to talk to it?
I'm just gonna pull that up to make sure I have it. I know that it was a claim that was, we were asked, this typical situation where there was an individual that, I believe there was damage to a car. Yeah, and I can't, sorry. Need my glasses, it's right. That's the email from the next one, next page is. Okay, so there was damage sustained to a vehicle on the road construction. It was submitted to the city. We, the city clerk, the city then turned it over to the insurance company, and the insurance company had investigated and asked for it to be disallowed. So
Our-
it's just
our
kind of a
insurance
standard, correct. So
city?
so what we're doing is just following their directives to disallow that claim.
I make a motion to not allow, disallow the claim.
second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item number 14, approval of election results from August 12th, 2024.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. So we're gonna, item 15 is adjourned to closed session pursuant Wisconsin statutes 19.85, subparagraph 1, section C, considering employment, promotions, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which this governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We're in closed.
Give me just a minute to turn